Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tindall, a CPA here at Dominion. We're a CPA firm specializing in growing advisor practices and helping them with their tax advisory. On today's episode, I have a very special guest, Duncan MacPherson. He's the CEO of Pareto Systems, which helps financial professionals build purposeful, profitable businesses through the Blue Square method. He is a sought after speaker, coach, and author of the Advisor Playbook and the Blue Square Method. He shares actionable strategies to achieve productivity and balance, which is essential for every advisor. He's based in Kelowna, British Columbia, and he enjoys golfing, tennis, skiing, family time with his wife and two sons. So thanks for coming on today, Duncan.
Catherine, thanks for having me. And just right up front, you're doing a great job. I love your perspective on how a financial professional can reach that next level. You have a unique window into the space. So I've been looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, and I really appreciate. So for those of you listening, this should already be live by the time this episode comes out. But Duncan was graciously hosting me on his podcast, which we can post a link on there for you to check out. His podcast and the work his team's doing, talking about some of the tax work that we do. And I wanted to reciprocate because I've heard from a number of people just some of the transformations and things that they've achieved through working with you. And then also a couple of other advisors to advisors have spoken really highly of Duncan's team and the work that they're achieving for advisors. And I think in a lot of ways, we have a good amount of alignment in terms of what we see as opportunities for advisors. And just when you're under the hood with people and you're in the trenches with them. And, in my case, it's, looking at financial statements and, hey, what's going on here and what's on the horizon. And, in some ways getting to read between the lines of what people say about their business versus what are we actually seeing for financial performance. It's kind of hard to lie when somebody's looking, kind of looking at those statements. But I really wanted to have just an open conversation today around things that you've been seeing on the practice management side. One topic that I love that I want to hit today is the plateau avoidance, because that's something I see very commonly in practices, especially with talent acquisition, where they will, AUM's going up naturally and they're doing a great job. But in terms of them kind of getting to the next level of enterprise, they plateau because of talent issues and because of the, just increased complexity of professionalizing everything. But a place for us to start the conversation, and this is a scenario I've been seeing, maybe more and more frequently, is I encounter a lot of advisors who are very comfortable in their practices where they've gone through the painful teenage years, they've gone through the client acquisition, years, they have a good gig, and they're kind of, running pretty small teams. And I see them kind of in this combination of comfort and fear, because they're comfortable and they don't want to risk what they've built. But at the same time, I see greatness in them, but they're afraid to take the next step. And I think a lot of what your team works with is helping people to actually not, they're afraid because they don't know. It's where a lot of the fear comes from. And I think to center around kind of how you've seen this in practices with using a methodology so that you do know, and you're walking with other people so that as you're going through those expansions in the practice to that enterprise level, you shouldn't be afraid. It's just you leveling up in excellence. So have you seen a similar thing with advisors, that kind of fear of what getting beyond that initial comfort into, real growth looks like?
It's a great place to start. And, it's interesting. I have a lot of initial conversations with financial professionals who are kicking our tires, deciding if they might want to work with us. And early in that diagnostic, the gap analysis, I ask a pretty direct question. And it all revolves around this. I say, do you ever pinch yourself thinking that I had no idea I would achieve this level of success? And many advisors, when they're brutally honest, they'll tell me, I had no idea I could make this much money.
Yeah.
Now, there's an art and science to this. And I'll plant this seed and then park it and we can come back to it later. But I mean, so much of what you do and what I do and what a financial advisor does is measurable, right? KPIs, all of that. But then there's the meaningful. There's the personal fulfillment, the sense of purpose, right? The calling, the impact you're having on people's lives. But sometimes that can be self-limiting, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if a financial advisor is at a point where they're making more money than they ever thought possible, then they're thinking, okay, that can become self-limiting and to the point of being self-fulfilling, where they say, I don't want to disrupt this and potentially self-sabotage what I'm doing. So let's just ride the status quo. So it provokes this conversation about purpose and best version of yourself and what does all that look like. Now, here's what I found, and especially in the last 5 years, because the last 5 years have been so revealing. There's 3 types of advisors today. And I'm sure you've seen this too. There's advisors who are coasting, advisors who are cresting, and advisors who are climbing. So the coasting advisor, they're set in their ways. They're not changing. They might talk a good game, but they're not changing. And that's fine. They've earned the right. They've got a good life. But the problem is they're on a collision course with obsolescence.
Yeah.
Because the commoditization, the turbulence, all of it is going to accelerate. Volatility, fee compression, all of that. It's going to be merciless on a pretty substantial group of people. Coasting. Cresting. These are advisors, and you meet them. I mean, they're still growing, and life is good and busy and becoming intense. But the problem is they haven't gotten out in front of their capacity issues.
Yeah.
So they're on a collision course with a plateau. They're going to max out. And then you get the advisors who are climbing. And the climbers keep refining and optimizing and standardizing everything they do. They've walked away from this notion that it's a book of business. To your point, now it's a business. It's an actual business. And they're so fixated on plateau avoidance. And this is how they get there. On a yearly basis, they keep popping the hood, kicking their own tires, and conducting a gap analysis to determine where they stand. And I'll just, a little shameless plug here, Catherine. We have a tool. It's free. It's self-guided. It's called the Practice Management Index. All an advisor has to do is invest an hour of their day and walk through this sequential self-guided exercise on 18 focus areas to reveal their gaps. And it's so incredibly revealing. And it comes down to like atomic habits and the concept of minor adjustments leading to major improvements. The whole goal in plateau avoidance is to identify 6 to 8 little gaps, little tweaks that once they're identified and addressed, they can lead to meaningful and measurable improvements. But they're not dramatic. They're subtle. And they build on themselves as a composite. So long-winded answer to your very important question is to just have immense self-awareness and avoid contentment and complacency so you can keep climbing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny how you say that, because in talking about when advisors will kind of almost self-sabotage themselves to growth, you know, I just had a situation recently in assessment, because something that we do is I take a look at what they're spending their time on certain accounting administrative tasks and say, you know, what's the actual value of your time? Like, this is a number that I can calculate. I know what you did in profit last year. We do a survey to see how many hours you work. How much is your time worth currently? Yeah. And that's not even the best measure, right? Because your time is actually the opportunity cost of your highest value activity. But I just do it at a lower rate. And for a lot of them, I find like they're wasting so much personal, mental energy and resources going after little things, when in reality, it's like you said, it's those little tweaks of get this off your plate, get that off your plate, just these operational moves for getting their own focus in place where they can be focusing on the business instead of putting out all these little fires that are just going to keep them at a certain level, and also in a certain mindset of just what they need to be achieving, right? I see with a lot of them where they don't realize that, the game isn't me trying to reduce expenses as much as possible. It's me building out this platform that's sustainable to the growth that I'm trying to get. And I need people in competency to do that, whether they're internal people, external people, whatever. It's not going to be all me. This thing will be limited by my own intelligence if I'm the smartest person and I'm pulling all the strings. But in terms of so I think with a lot of these advisors who are kind of in this coast mentality, something that really can spook me a little bit with them. Like I've been seeing a lot of big valuations come out, and I think that creates a false sense of security for a lot of people. What are some things that you would recommend besides doing this, the initial gap analysis, that's an awesome tool, and we'll put that in the show notes here. How do you think advisors should be looking at their practice in terms of where would you recommend they start in terms of self-analysis of how to really get themselves to the next level?
Okay, so first of all, every time you and I talk, I just have to remind myself that you're a CPA because you do not sound like a CPA. You sound like a coach, thought leader. And I know you've got the technical ability as a CPA, but it is so incredibly refreshing to hear your perspective because it's not just technical. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because it just keeps
Thank you.
coming up in my mind. Okay, so to answer your question, and I love your perspective on the time, like how you invest time. And I have this very simple sort of metaphor. I say you're either putting sand in your hourglass or you're putting sand in a shopping cart, transacting, trading time for money, not building something, spinning tires, all that other stuff. Keep investing your time. And there's an extension on the Pareto principle, right? 80% of your productivity comes from 20% of your activity. It's just pure cause and effect. So what do you get paid to do? We spend a lot of time on that. Like we talk about it in our books and, in our coaching and things like that. But succinctly, where does somebody start? The framework begins with, I say, okay, look, you're managing three things. You manage money, you manage a business, and you manage people. Two of those three are proprietary. One is commoditized. Mm-hmm. So I never trivialize someone's technical ability. It's essential, but it's just a minimum requirement. And I know you want to take that seriously, but you can't live and die by that. It's just a given. Keep going. So managing a business and managing people, that's where a lion's share, like an advisor should be thinking, how do I liberate myself to effectively get out of the asset management business and automate, allocate, or, disconnect from some of that to liberate myself to go deeper into what's mine. Okay. So what does that ultimately mean? And, if you begin with the end in mind, you're trying to decommoditize your value so that a client focuses on what you're worth, not what you cost. And that's a lot of bedside manner deliverables. So decommoditize, depersonalize, which means it's not the Catherine show, right? It's not just that as a client, I trust you. No. I have a panoramic appreciation for your value fully and completely. So decommoditize, depersonalize, and demystify. What does that mean? What makes you different? Like what actual value added do you bring to the relationship that someone actually values? And can they internalize and then socialize that to someone else? That's the trajectory we want to get on. And that's engineered. It's by design. It takes time, but that's where we see advisors have these massive breakthroughs. And, I said this yesterday in a conversation. I said, because I was talking to an advisor that had a major breakthrough. He set a goal to have 500 million in AUM, and he got there. And I said to him, I said, do you find it fascinating that nowhere in your breakthrough did you become better as a financial advisor? You're always good. What did you get better?
Yeah.
You got better at the client experience. You got better at articulating your value and differentiating and being more referable, things like that. So that's all engineered. So that's the philosophy and the mindset we start with. And then we lay out a blueprint to track in that direction.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I see a lot of people, and I don't know if you've had the same experience, but like I see a lot of people get stuck around 100 because it's kind of this threshold where they're comfortable. They can kind of spin all the plates themselves. Mm-hmm. They've optimized things enough, but then they don't take the next step of, well, what kind of impact could my life have if we got this to 500? Because it's not about the revenue. Like that's just a side effect of you running a healthy, good business and having a team that, it's the financial performance is the outcome. It's not the input. And I think for a lot of people, it's what kind of personal transformation would you have from going to the 100 to going to the 500 to going to the 1 billion to going to the 10 billion, and maybe, wherever you stop along that trajectory. But I see a lot of people get stuck where it's like, I know you could get there, and it would make, and the person you would be getting there, you would be proud, you would be happy that you've done this. And it's not about the revenue. It's not about the money. It's about the personal excellence that it takes, and the kind of impact that your organization has on, right now you're only serving 100 households, or you're serving 200 households. How many people could you help? If you got that to 1,000, how many, the work that you do is genuinely good. And if you were able to work through an engineered process, not recreating the wheel, to get yourself to that 1,000 household mark, how many lives is that? That's so many lives that you're touching. And then the next generation, it's like, what a beautiful gift. And even for yourself, the gift of the person you have to become, for your clients, for your team, for your family, for yourself, and your own self-respect and your own boundaries. Like, I feel like that's the calling of what business is really about. And so that's why I love what you guys are doing, just because it's aligned with that, and that the marketplace finds value in that. And that's why you get the financial outcome, is because you're genuinely creating this value. So have you seen, when people have gone through this kind of transformation on the business side, like how have you seen that change them personally, or maybe change the level at what they think they can achieve in terms of impact when they go through this process and they start to see some of these initial gains as they get to those goals?
Just a slight interruption in this conversation. I wanted to bring to your attention two things that are important for you to know. So we're always at the mercy of social media algorithms. So if you can subscribe to the show, that would mean a lot to me. Even more to me if you can leave a rating and let me know what you think about it. But we have a new newsletter that's coming out. It's going to be very active in 2025. That is specifically around tax issues that I'm seeing advisors face in their own practices, changes in legislations, and the pieces that I think are critically important for you to stay ahead of as an advisor with the new administration. So nearby, wherever you're interacting with this, will be the link of how to sign up for our newsletter. Also nearby will be the link to my LinkedIn, which is the best way to get in touch with me, learn more about what we're doing for advisors in the tax strategy and compliance work that we do, and also to get access to the various tools and interviews and things that I do, specifically designed to help you improve your practice, improve your own tax situation, etc. So let's get back to the episode, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, again, a great perspective. And, it's so personal and individual. I mean, some people are content with 100 million, and that's perfectly fine. You live by the rules you set, and others have ambition to get more. And I remember one advisor, back to the belief system. What happened for him was he started getting introduced to some clients that were a little bit more sophisticated and complex. And it, based on the law of environment, it brought something out in him. Mm-hmm. And he started asking clients, especially the first generation self-made business owners and professionals, he started asking them, like, how did you reach an inflection point and a breakthrough? And, the clients love talking about their journey, especially the proverbial 25-year overnight success stories, right?
Yeah.
And that advisor fed off of that energy, and it almost subconsciously gave him permission to reach a little further and push a little harder. And I remember in the conversation, I relayed a mantra to him that was shared with me many years ago. And the quote was, "It's not what you get and how much you earn that makes you valuable. It's who you become."
Yes.
The number one question on the job is not how much am I earning here? It's who am I becoming here? Mm-hmm. And that opens up now some people hear that and it doesn't resonate, but others, it really gets into their heads and it just opens up a different conversation. So for some advisors, it's environmental. It's who they're around. For other advisors, they get into this dynamic where they realize, okay, my growth right now is not sustainable. I've got a lot of relationships, but based on 80-20, if 80% of my business comes from 20% of the clients, why am I spending 80% of my time with the 80% of the clients who generate 20% of my business? Like, it's not sustainable. So for them, growth comes in the form of growing down. Like, they actually would go through a partial book sale, they'd right size, they'd disassociate, they'd allocate, they'd automate some of the relationships that are not a great fit to liberate them to go deeper. And what happens is they create a professional scarcity. Yep. Where those really ideal clients really feel like they belong to something. They're getting an elevated level of service and experience, and it makes that advisor referable to that group. So there's many ways to figure this out. Another one I'll share with you, and I know we've talked about this before because, we spend so much time talking about enterprise value and maximizing your life's work. Well, for some advisors, their idea of growth is to shift from B2C to B2B. So they shift from organic growth to scalable. They scale up. So they can go out and acquire a business or attract other advisors to adopt and draft in behind the process. And now they're really running a business. And anyway, so long-winded answer once again, but this is where it gets very fulfilling for people like you and I, because you see somebody self-actualize. They get out of their own way and they give themselves permission and say, okay, let's find another gear. And when you see that come to life, it's very powerful.
Yeah. And I'm a big proponent of like personality testing. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of the client, spoiler alert for anybody who talks to me, a big part of what's going on when we're having conversations is I'm trying to pin down how this person works, because when I'm giving advice, to say to somebody who's one type, like, hey, you should get yourself to $1 billion, that's not the right advice, right? Like, that's just not how they're wired, whatever, versus you've got others where they, it's just a lot of it comes down to personality. And I find, with a lot of people, and especially in the conversations I have with them, some of these introspective questions of like, well, where are you trying to drive things? Like, what do you want? Where do you want to go? And, I can tell with some people that there's not really a plan there. And I don't know that they really have that like confidence and belief in themselves. And it's funny because like, I look at their business performance and I'm like, you can do this. Like, I can see in the past 5 years what you were able to do. Like, you have every mistake that you make, and that's the stuff that keeps you up at night. And, that one client that you screwed up, that one thing, 3 years ago that you still can't forget about, people don't realize. It's like, I have these conversations and I'm like, you can get there. Like, don't be conservative. Like, for you to be conservative in this situation doesn't make sense based on the performance that you've had. For you to fail now it's not a rational answer. And then I think especially for a lot of people, it's the don't recreate the wheel, right? And like, I was having this conversation with a client recently where we were talking about his practice, and he's going to a conference and we were talking about how, I said, find somebody that's, a couple steps ahead of you or quite a few steps ahead of you, and then just, talk to them, and if you're trying to build out, for the platform he's on, if you're trying to build out certain things, it's like, chances are they've probably built out some of that stuff, like some of the templates, some of the workflows. Don't recreate the wheel, because just find somebody who's gone to where you're trying to get to and has the quality of life that you want. And most people are more than willing to show you the path that got them to where they want to go. But it's more about you being humble and being introspective and willing to go up those paths and challenge yourself. But yeah, like you said, it's the person you become. So what in terms of, things that you've been seeing for 2025 and just in practices, it seems like my experience has been in this fall planning season, everybody's been having a really good year. What are some challenges that you see on the horizon for people, or, challenges that you've been seeing in practices, for the advisors who are listening to maybe not feel alone or to get some feedback on of things that you've been, encountering with practices recently?
Okay, great question. But I want to come back to what you were saying about personalities, because
Sure.
I take that very seriously as well, because chemistry and compatibility is so essential in every relationship. And you would know this as a coach. I know this, that, I can't want it more than somebody else. And sometimes I put myself in a situation where I believed in somebody to such a degree that I light a fire. Pep talk gets them motivated and doesn't last very long. It kind of has the lasting value of a Red Bull, very temporary.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways. If you think of Temet Noske, know thyself, as a coach, you got to know yourself. And my style, when we meet a prospective client who's entertaining the idea of hiring a coach, it's not a sales encounter. We don't try to convince someone to become a client of ours. It's bought, not sold. Like, we want to see if we're compatible and if what they aspire to aligns with our philosophy and our process. And if it doesn't, we'll be the first to tell them, because we're not all things to all people. Okay.
Yeah.
So that self-awareness is so incredibly important. So I just wanted to comment on that. Now, getting to your question, we all know from the 7 habits of highly effective people, one of the habits is to begin with the end in mind. And that ties to your why. It creates a beacon, like, where are we going, trajectory, all of that. And something I'm putting a big emphasis on right now, part of this is demography, part of there's other motivations here, but I just keep saying to advisors, every business is built to be sold.
Yes.
And whether you intend to sell it in 12 months, 5 years, or have no design date, every investment of effort you make working on your business contributes to your enterprise value. So, we have this very rudimentary framework. I know you can go into the weeds on this quite a bit, but our framework is always strive to be at the top of your game. And TOP is an acronym. The 3 areas that you really want to focus on when it comes to maximizing the value of your life's work and what is probably the most valuable asset you possess, your business, is tidy, optimized, and proprietary. Okay, so tidy ultimately means is like, there's nothing in the closet. There's no skeletons. There's nothing. There's no hair.
Yeah.
And you could obviously be invaluable in helping somebody. It's almost like staging a home. And the mindset is like, I'm going to have a home inspection done before I list the house. I'm going to fix everything before I try to sell it. Tidy, optimized means your numbers. You know all of the KPIs, the qualitative and the quantitative. It's all completely defined. And then proprietary. You've established a variety of assets within your business that you consider intellectual property that the marketplace can only get from you, like your client experience, your how you engage with a prospective client. Nothing lives in your head. Everything, if it's in your head, it's a skill. It's not as valuable as when it's documented. So now to your point about coaching and peer sharing and aligning yourself so you don't reinvent the wheel, AI is mind-boggling. Like I said to an advisor, we were talking about building a procedures manual, a playbook, an intellectual property. It's a valuable asset. And we got into this and he said, oh my gosh, this sounds like work. And I go, it is work, but done is better than perfect. Just get it done. You can have it done in 90 days. I told him to go on to ChatGPT, Catherine, and I just said, give it this prompt. Just say, I am a financial advisor. I lead a team of 5 people. Provide for me a framework and a chassis for standard operating procedures and a proprietary playbook. And in 3 seconds, Chat produced, and I'm sure it's scraping from me and from other coaches out there, because it produced a very powerful framework that you now have a blueprint to start to populate. And then as you get granular, Chat will help you populate it. Now it's not perfect, but it'll put you in the red zone. You could have that intellectual property done in 90 days or less if you're motivated and you see the value. So Catherine, that's something we spend a lot of time on, is helping advisors get at the top of their game. And here's what's amazing about this, by the way. I've had advisors come to me saying, I'm out of gas. I'm burnt out. I got stuff going on at home. I serve the business. The business doesn't serve me, and I want to sell it. And we go through an exercise of staging the business and getting it all organized so they're at the top of their game, and now they're rejuvenated. They say, you've liberated me to actually focus on what I love about this business. I'm not selling it. And it's
they have sold it, right? They sold it to themselves.
Right? Great perspective. I love that.
To your future self. That's who you're, when people do that, that's what I always say to them is, you're either an asset that's good to run is an asset that's good to own. The reason why it's valuable to somebody else is because it should be valuable to you, right? Yeah. And if you can make those changes, you've sold it to yourself.
But when they detach, when they get out of the minutia and the things that bog them down and cause them dread and keep them up at night, and just allow themselves to just say, okay, I want the business to serve my life. What do I love about this business? And so if I love doing this, I love meeting with these types of clients, I love doing events, and I like, whatever, just define what you love. And then all the things that you don't love, outsource, automate, allocate, disassociate from. If there's clients you don't love, disassociate respectfully. And just, you've earned the right to be in this, in this stage of your life, and so many good things come out of that. So anyway, great questions, by the way.
Yeah, I love that. And so for advisors who are interested in learning more about what you and the team are doing, we'll post that gap assessment analysis self-guided. But for people who are interested in having a personalized conversation or kind of getting into your world, we'll link the episode that I was on. But what are good ways for people to find out more about what your team's doing and some of the the transformations that people have been experiencing?
Well, thanks for that. And first of all, like you, we're very active on LinkedIn. So you can just look for me, Duncan MacPherson. I should pop right up, and we share a lot there on a regular basis. So that's a good way to sort of get to know us a little bit. You can go to ParetoSystems.com and just kick our tires there. And if you want to schedule a call, that'd be great. The Practice Management Index, as I said, is completely free. The currency you have to apply to that is an hour of your life. Now, some people have spent a lot more time than an hour on it because they just really wanted to get that clarity. So yeah, the PMI, the Practice Management Index, Pareto Systems, and then the Blue Square Method, bluesquaremethod.com. You can download the table of contents and the sample chapter and get a sense for the nuance and the tone that we speak in with, to a financial professional. And that's probably a good place to start.
Nice. Perfect. So for those of you interested, we'll post those links below for those resources, and you can go friend Duncan on LinkedIn and send him a hello. But any other closing thoughts you want to share with people listening, or message of hope, or where you'd like for us to sign off for today?
Okay, so I played pickleball last night with a good friend of mine, and we've had so many conversations about Japan. Okay, and so I'll leave on this note. So first of all, you might have heard of a show on Netflix called The Blue Zone. And the Blue Zone is this study of parts of the world where there's longevity, people living longer and more healthy lives. And the first episode was filmed in Okinawa, Japan, which is a phenomenal place, by the way. I recommend it to everybody. But I'm bringing this up because we all know Kaizen, right? Kaizen essentially means, constant improvement. Kai is change, Zen is good, change is good. Okay. But then also building on that, there's this concept called Ikigai that was established in Okinawa. And the Ikigai is our reason for being. And it's such a fascinating study. If you've read Good to Great, I talk about it in the Blue Square Method, the study, you can go watch YouTube videos on the premise of Ikigai and making sure you're in the right place, doing the right things on your terms. And then lastly, on the Japanese theme is this concept known as kintsugi. And kintsugi is the art of repairing broken pottery with glue that has gold in it. And the finished repaired product is actually more valuable than the original, and not just because of the gold, but because of the symbolism of the scar. I own a couple of pieces of kintsugi, and it's the energy is moving. And basically the moral of this whole little topic is that there's probably nothing wrong or broken with your business, but if you do pop the hood, if you do your gap analysis and you make these adjustments, it's like a form of kintsugi, and your business is more valuable, but there's also a level of personal fulfillment that comes from the exercise that is invaluable. So I just wanted to share with that because it was an extension of a recent conversation. I just love that subject matter. So there you go.
Oh, that's really cool. I really like that because I think it reflects something I really believe in, which is, everything that has growth in life, it's because there's almost like a war and a tension and a strain that happens. Like they did this study where they had a bubble environment trying to figure out how they would terraform like other plants. It was something like that. And they had these trees in the bubble, and they found that the trees wouldn't grow. And part of the reason why the trees wouldn't grow is because there was no wind, that the trees needed the microfractures in order to build the stability so that they could actually grow. And I think everything in life is like that. And I love the kintsugi thing just because it's the same principle of, you as an advisor, you as a business owner, you as a parent, you as a spouse, you as a sibling, you in all of your roles, you're kind of like that tree. You're kind of like that piece of pottery. Like you're going to have these moments where we are brittle and we'll break against the stressors that we come across in our life. But then it's up to us to repair that. And it's the repairing process that brings in the value, that brings in the growth, that brings the strength against. And it's a continual process that doesn't stop, that living and growing and fighting and striving and breaking and fixing. It's really good. It's just a part of life. And the more you can embrace that and lean into the discomfort of that, that's how you get to those levels. Otherwise you turn into the coaster comfortable people that you're just the little shrub,
Well, isn't
never get
that
there.
true? And yeah, it's a great insight there. And, it comes down to contrast and context. I mean, you need the cold to appreciate the warm. You need the dark to appreciate the light. And your example of the trees, I mean, it's like a good vineyard knows that, you've got to deprive the vines, not give it too much water, and make it work a little bit. Let the roots go down a little bit further and let it reach for the sun a little bit hard. If it gets too comfortable, and comfort creates complacency. So you want to embrace that discomfort and let it serve you, not hurt you. And there's just an immense activation of gratitude there and not taking things for granted. I had another philosophy shared with me long time ago, and it said, you have to appreciate what you have as you aspire to what you want. If it's all aspiration, then we do take things for granted, and it's not quite as meaningful when we achieve what we aspire to. So, hey, I've never had this type of conversation with an accountant in my life. So good on you. I didn't even know you existed from, you know what I'm saying, based on your professional space.
Oh, it's funny. Can you tell that I did a bit of a philosophy degree before I got into accounting? But
well, there's the art and
important
science,
stuff.
right? You've got it both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just as people in business, it's easy to get to the point where once you've hit that hierarchy of needs, of that the material needs are met, it can be hard to find fulfillment, and I think it's realizing that you have to kind of go up into the scale, and it requires a lot of introspection and challenge, and
what's
that's just
powerful
the
about
natural order of things.
It's funny you would bring up Maslow's hierarchy, because when I first got introduced to that, and this goes back a long time ago, I didn't get it. Like, it didn't resonate with me. But if you think of that philosophy, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
Yeah, that's true.
So I got introduced to Maslow's hierarchy, and the whole premise of, belonging and esteem and self-actualization. And I'm like, okay, whatever. It's esoteric. It's abstract. I mean, and then 20 years later, I happened upon it in a book, and it hit me, and then I was a dad and my life was different. It hit me so incredibly hard. And I said, it's the same information. I just wasn't ready then. But it is, we're so lucky, to be in the fee for service space as a knowledge for profit professional. We're so lucky to be in this era. I have immense optimism. I know there's a lot of negativity out there, but I'm the fountain, not the drain. I'm convinced it's going to be phenomenal. But we're so lucky to be in a position where we can actually think that self-actualization is a possibility. A lot of people, I mean, they fight for security and safety every day. That's a daily, that's their aspiration. And so we're very, very lucky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's a real blessing to be where we are. And I think, for a lot of the advisor clients and those conversations, it's like they're able to, when I've seen them kind of ascend these levels over the years of relationships, and it's like, I know that they're then doing the same thing for their clients. Like, and what a beautiful thing that is just helping them just get the financial things sorted and clean, and, getting them out of that place of fear for them. They're pulling everybody else up with them. And it's, we're in a very beautiful time of civilization, in my opinion. Not that there's no problems, but I think, if you've got a heart to give, and, you want to build a business that really serves other people, this is a wonderful time to do it. But thank you so much for this conversation, Duncan. I really appreciate you being here and taking the time, and, the deep sharing. And for people who are interested, like I said, we'll post all those links. I'm always interested in having these kinds of conversations, and go say hi to Duncan and tell us what resonated with you from the episode.
Well, likewise, you did a great job as expected, and let's do it again sometime. And thanks everybody for listening in. I hope we, if nothing else, just validated or just reminded you of a few things, and hopefully we can cross paths again down the road.
Yeah, that sounds great. So for those of you listening, this was another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. We'll post those links, and I'm always interested in hearing your feedback. Until next time.